American Airlines is the largest airline on Earth. And yet, when the most important decisions in modern aviation had to be made, the airline repeatedly chose the ones that weakened its own future. Not because of bad luck, not because of events nobody could predict, but because at nearly every critical moment since 2020, American Airlines made choices that destroyed flexibility, lost revenue, and handed advantage to its competitors. Billions of dollars in missed opportunity. A fleet strategy that backfired. Alliances that collapsed. Corporate customers that walked away. This is the story of how the world's biggest airline slowly began dismantling its own future. To understand how this happened, you first need to understand the structure of the American airline industry. In the United States, commercial aviation is effectively controlled by three massive carriers: Delta Airlines, United Airlines, and American Airlines. Together, these companies dominate the market. They control most major hubs, operate thousands of daily flights, and handle the majority of corporate travel in the country. By one measure, American Airlines stands at the very top. It carries more passengers than any airline on Earth. But when you look at the numbers that actually determine whether an airline is healthy, things like profit margin, revenue per seat, and return on capital, American consistently finishes last among the big three. And the gap between American and its competitors is getting bigger. To understand why, we need to go back to the beginning of the pandemic. Early in 2020, the airline industry faced a crisis unlike anything it had seen before. Borders closed, countries locked down, passenger demand collapsed almost overnight. Airlines suddenly found themselves with hundreds of wide-body aircraft designed for international travel, and almost no passengers to fill them. Planes like the Boeing 777, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, and the Airbus A330. These aircraft are incredibly expensive to operate. Without international passengers, they become financial liabilities sitting on the ground. So every airline had to make a decision. What do you do with these planes? United Airlines chose a cautious approach. Instead of permanently retiring aircraft, the airline placed many of them into temporary storage. Some were parked at maintenance facilities. Others were flown to desert airports like Roswell, New Mexico, or Victorville, California. In the dry desert air, aircraft can sit for years without serious damage. United's strategy was simple. If international travel returned, they would still have the planes. Delta Airlines took a more selective approach. They retired a small number of aircraft, specifically their Boeing 757-300 fleet. These were older planes, less fuel efficient, and already approaching retirement. It was a surgical cut, a careful adjustment. American Airlines did something very different. Instead of trimming the fleet, the airline panicked. American retired its entire Airbus A330 fleet, its entire Boeing 767 fleet, and its entire Boeing 757 fleet. In one decision, American eliminated roughly 30% of its long-haul capacity. Where United stored aircraft and Delta trimmed carefully, American destroyed a massive portion of its future network. At the time, management believed international demand might take years to recover, but the world had other plans. Fast forward to the summer of 2022. Vaccines had rolled out and borders reopened. After nearly 2 years of cancelled trips, postponed weddings, and missed vacations, people were desperate to travel. International demand surged. Flights between the United States and Europe exploded in popularity. Routes to London, Paris, Rome, airlines began charging some of the highest ticket prices in aviation history, and passengers paid them. Delta collected the revenue. United collected the revenue. American Airlines could not. Many of the aircraft that would have flown those routes no longer existed in its fleet. Instead of operating its full international schedule, American could only run about 80% of its pre-pandemic routes. And the situation soon became worse. At the same time, American needed more aircraft. Boeing encountered a manufacturing issue with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. A defect in the aircraft's fuselage forced regulators to halt deliveries. American had expected 13 new Dreamliners before the summer travel season. Instead, they received 0. Without those planes, the airline had no way to expand capacity. Routes began disappearing. Seattle to London, Los Angeles to Sydney, Dallas to Santiago, Edinburgh. Shannon. all cancelled. American focused its remaining aircraft on only the most profitable routes, but by then the opportunity had already passed. Between 2019 and 2023, Americans spent about 17% more on international travel. By 2024, that number climbed to 27%, a historic travel boom, and American Airlines watched much of it go to competitors. Eventually, Boeing resumed deliveries of the Boeing 787, and American began receiving its aircraft. But this revealed another unexpected problem. By retiring so many older aircraft during the pandemic, American had accidentally created a fleet that was too new. That might sound like a good thing, but newer aircraft cost far more to lease or finance. Airlines normally balance older aircraft and newer aircraft. Older planes are cheaper but burn more fuel. New planes save fuel but have higher financing costs. The balance allows airlines to adjust flying throughout the year for peak seasons, slow seasons, holiday travel, and winter travel. But Americans' balance had shifted too far. Today, nearly 47% of Americans' long-haul fleet consists of newer generation aircraft. At United, the number is about 32%. At Delta, roughly 37%. Before the pandemic, Americans' number was closer to 27%. Now the airline is stuck with a fleet that remains expensive even when demand slows. To fix the problem, American has delayed some future Boeing 787 deliveries. This means slower growth and fewer aircraft available during peak demand. While all of this was happening, American also struggled in another region, the Pacific. Flights between the United States and Asia are dominated by United Airlines, Delta Airlines, and several major Asian carriers. American has never fully cracked this market. Part of the problem comes down to geography. American's main West Coast hub is Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is unique. Delta, United, and American all operate hubs there. When three airlines share the same hub airport, none of them dominate the domestic network feeding long-haul flights. United solved this by focusing on San Francisco. Delta built a massive hub in Seattle. American remained stuck competing for the same passengers in Los Angeles. So in early 2020, American attempted something ambitious. The airline partnered with Alaska Airlines. Alaska has an extremely strong domestic network in the Pacific Northwest. American planned to use Alaska's passengers to feed new international flights from Seattle. 3 routes were announced: Seattle to London, Seattle to Shanghai, and an ambitious route to India's technology capital, Seattle to Bangalore. The flight would take nearly 15 hours. It would be one of the longest flights American Airlines had ever attempted. Seattle's northern location made it barely possible. But then, events intervened again. The pandemic delayed the launch. Boeing's aircraft delays pushed it back further. Then, in early 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Western airlines were banned from Russian airspace. Flights between North America and Asia suddenly became much longer. The Seattle to Bangalore route, already at the edge of aircraft range, became impossible. The Pacific strategy collapsed before it even began. But perhaps the most damaging mistake came from somewhere else entirely: corporate travel. Business travelers are some of the most valuable customers in aviation. They book frequently. They often pay higher fares, and large companies typically book through travel agencies. American Airlines attempted to change that system. The airline pushed customers to book directly through American's own platform instead of through travel agencies. The goal was simple: cut out intermediaries, save money. But the reaction was immediate. Corporate travel agencies simply redirected their clients to Delta, to United. Companies stopped booking American flights, and because business travelers generate enormous revenue, the financial damage was severe. The strategy cost American Airlines roughly $1.5 billion. Eventually, the airline reversed the decision. But rebuilding corporate relationships takes years. When you step back and look at the full picture, a pattern becomes clear. American Airlines did not suffer from one catastrophic mistake. Instead, it made a series of strategic miscalculations: retiring too many aircraft, missing the international recovery, building an expensive fleet structure, losing its Pacific expansion, alienating corporate customers. Each decision created new problems, and each problem weakened the airline's competitive position. American Airlines is still flying. It is still technically the largest airline on Earth by passenger numbers. But in the areas that matter most, profitability, strategic flexibility, and global competitiveness, it continues to trail its rivals. Delta and United simply made fewer mistakes at the moments that mattered most. And in aviation, timing is everything. The question now is simple. Has American Airlines finally learned from these mistakes, or is the world's largest airline still struggling to find its way back to the top? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the aviation industry, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the channel and allows us to keep making detailed stories about how airlines actually work, and sometimes how they fall apart.